Alright, so we're going to start by making chicken tortilla soup. I'm really excited about this. Alright, it's something that you can do if you have any kind of like leftover chicken and you want to just shred it and use it in the soup. You can also, boil chicken or roast chicken for it. But really, that's not really the star of the whole dish. Most of the flavor is going to come from the broth itself, which is why I have some leftover chicken that I've already pre-shredded, and that way I'm going to use that in the soup. So it'll be really good, like especially if you want to just buy like one of the rotisserie chickens from the store, maybe like something that's got just like an original flavor or something like that, because like I said, the chicken really isn't the star of it, and it doesn't really make the dish as much as the broth is going to actually have most of the flavor in it. So I'm going to start by just prepping some of the vegetables that we need and getting those set up so that way we can start on making the broth. So I'm going to start with an onion. We're going to take off just a small part of this. Now I can take this part off and still be okay. If you're actually looking for some relief as far as when you're cutting an onion and you don't want it to make your eyes tear as much, you can actually leave that part on and do what I'm doing now and cut it with that part on, and it'll actually help release less of that chemical. I learned that actually just a little while ago. I actually didn't know that, and I kind of picked that up just from some of the subscriptions I have on YouTube. So kind of interesting. I thought that was pretty interesting. I've never really had an issue with cutting onions, so I never really thought about it, but if you do, that'd be kind of an interesting fact to have, or an interesting thing to try. Okay, so I'm going to start by dicing the onion. I'm actually going to try and dice the onion as small as I can, so I'm going to just follow the natural lines of the onion all the way around. And I'm going to try and get as close to the base as possible. So we're going to go ahead and just give it a quick run across the top and the bottom parts, and then just cut it down. Like I said, I want to try and do them as small as possible. And then when you get to the bottom part here, just kind of give it a few chops all the way around. We'll kind of let go of the rest there. This one I've already chopped across, so we'll just go ahead and dice as small as we can. I don't want too big of pieces in the soup because I feel like it'll be unappetizing to bite into like a big chunk of onion. So I'm going to go ahead and dice those just as small as I can. And I used a relatively small onion because I don't want it just covered in onion for that. Now we are going to do the garlic. I've got 3 cloves of garlic here that I'm going to go ahead and do. And so I'm going to go ahead and mince the garlic. So I'm going to use my paring knife to mince the garlic because I want to try and get it as small as possible. So let's see here. We'll go ahead and take the garlic and just kind of cut it on the inside of it. Cut it as small as we possibly can. I did probably about 1/4 inch across, so we're going to do it kind of similar to what we did with the onion. So just take it and kind of do slices along the top. Now I'll just continue using the paring knife and just kind of mince it. Cut it as small as I can, getting as close to the base as possible. I need about a tablespoon or so of garlic, so that's why I'm using 3 cloves. So I'm going to do the same thing again. Now you can do this with a bigger knife, but it's a lot harder to do. Now that we have the garlic cut, I'm gonna go ahead and do the jalapenos. So I've got two pretty decent sized jalapenos. I actually think now that I'm looking at the size of this jalapeno, I'm probably only gonna use one. If you've got smaller ones, then I would consider using the two of them, but these are all pretty decent size. Or this is a pretty decent size jalapeno. So I'm actually not gonna put the seeds in it again, because with the addition of too many seeds, it will get very hot really quick. So some that do fall off, I'll go ahead and keep them, but a majority of them I did not want in there. So again, I'm going to try and cut these as fine as possible, because this is a soup and not really like a stew or something like that. I want to have small, little kind of unnoticeable pieces in there, because the bigger pieces are going to be the beans and the chicken. We just want the broth to be flavorful. So I'm going to slice and dice the jalapeno as small as I did the onion. Okay, so I've got a whole bunch here, but I'm only going to use probably about a quarter of it for the broth. The rest of it's going to be used for garnish. So I'll take a quarter of it or so off, kind of bunch it up real tight, and just give it a nice good rough chop. I actually still want it to have some structure to it. I don't want it to be too fine, because I'm actually looking for some of that in the soup as well. Alright, now that we've got everything prepped over here on this end, we're going to go ahead and start the cooking process. Alright, so we're going to start by just getting the vegetables sauteed first. So I'm going to start with just a small amount of butter. You can also use vegetable oil or olive oil or any kind of oil you'd like. I'm going to start with the onions first, because they need the most cooking. So we'll go ahead and get the onions in there. And we're going to give those probably about a minute and a half to 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes, just so they start to soften up and become translucent. Now that these are really starting to soften up, I'm going to go ahead and add the jalapeno as well as the garlic. Now you should really start at this point really smelling the garlic and the jalapeno and the onion. It'll get real aromatic. So we're really looking for everything to just kind of soften up. Okay, so now at this point we can go ahead and add the beans in there. Now the beans I rinsed and drained and rinsed. That way we're not carrying the juice over into this as well. Same with, I used fire roasted tomatoes, and I took most of the juice out, but I'm going to leave some of it in there as part of this soup. Alright, now that we've got all of that in there, I'm going to go ahead and add in the chicken broth. go ahead and turn the heat up all the way like to high on here so that I can bring it to a boil. We want it to bring it to a boil and then just kind of let it simmer for a short period of time just to allow all of the flavors to meld together. Now, I'm juicing the limes in there and I've got a juicer. Now, something with juicing limes and lemons, you don't want to ever go back for a second press, because what will happen is the oil from the rind will then make its way into your juice and it gives it kind of a bitter taste, where now you have like a nice, rather sweet yet like acidic-y juice from it, where if you get the oil from the rind in there, it actually makes it bitter. And that's something we're not looking for. So I'll just give it kind of a quick stir just to kind of bring everything together, and we'll go ahead and let it come to a boil. Now the seasonings on this are very simple. I'm just going to do about a teaspoon of ground pepper and about 2 teaspoons of salt. Now if you need to adjust the salt level and the pepper level to your liking, then you can always add a little bit more salt or a little more pepper. So we're going to go ahead and just let that come to a boil. So now that we've got it coming to a boil, we're going to go ahead and just bring the heat down and let it simmer, kind of bring all those flavors together. Now while we're doing that, now we're going to go ahead and also add the cilantro that we chopped to it. Just kind of stir that in and let it also kind of simmer along with it and bring all of those flavors together and make that broth really flavorful. So while we're doing that, we're going to go ahead and get our garnish ready for the dish. So we're going to go ahead and get our garnishes ready. I'm going to start by getting the avocado and cutting it in half. And getting it all the way removed. Now we're going to go ahead and work on getting the pit out. One of the ways I've learned to get the pit out is taking the butt end of the knife and kind of getting it caught in the pit, twisting, and then it comes right out. Now one way to get all of the avocado out is just to take a spoon and pop it right out. So we'll go ahead, and at this point what I like to go ahead and do so that we'll make sure that we got all the pit part out, and we'll go ahead and just do nice neat slices. Alright, now avocados oxidize really quickly, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is cut this lime. Now the lime, when I cut limes or lemons, I always use a serrated blade because the acid from it can actually dull a straight bladed knife. Granted, you still want to rinse your knife almost immediately after cutting the lemon or lime, even with a serrated blade. So we'll go ahead and just take that and cut it. And then I'm actually going to cut it into sticks. So I'll go ahead and just cut those out of it. Now, to keep the avocados from oxidizing, I'll go ahead and just put some lime juice on them. I use kind of 2 of the wedges here, and that'll allow the avocado to keep its color a lot longer. This is actually something you can do to apples as well to keep them from oxidizing, but I would use apple cider vinegar versus maybe like lemon, or even lemon, maybe not lime. I don't think lime and that would go pretty well together. So now that we've got our garnish ready, we've allowed that to simmer for a short amount of time, we're going to go ahead and assemble our bowl. So I'm going to start by putting some of our shredded chicken at the bottom part of the bowl. We'll go ahead and take just a small bunch of cilantro leaves, kind of bend them and everything and kind of bruise them to get the flavor coming out of them. And then I like to start with just a little bit of the cheese here at the top part, and then we're gonna go ahead and put some broth in there. So now that we've got the broth in there, we'll go ahead and take some of our sliced avocado and put that into the bowl, as well as you can garnish it with a lime. We'll garnish it with some tortilla chips. And then just a little bit of cheese on the top. And we've got our chicken tortilla soup.